3.5 draws near, and so does the rerun for one of the characters that were buffed in the 3.4 update, this time being Silverwolf. And in this video, I'm going to be taking you over everything as an updated guide, including her updated buff kit, the next best options to use for Lightcones, relic sets, ornaments, and some team ideas. And also does include stat recommendations. I now have a full build guide for every single new and returning 3.5 character, so if you are summoning and wanting to build Hysolines, or you're summoning for the rerun Kafka, or you're summoning for Ceredra, you can check out the guides in the pinned comment, and you are now watching the Silverwolf guide. Silverwolf's basic attack does quantum damage based off her attack to one designated enemy. Her skill has a 120% base chance to add the weakness type of the character that is positioned first on the team lineup. So let's say you're attacking an enemy that has wind, physical, and imaginary weakness. Let's say the character positioned first is Archer, so he is quantum, and so when you do use the skill from Silverwolf, it will implant quantum weakness. This also reduces the enemy target's res to that weakness type by 20% for 3 turns. If they already have that weakness, the res reduction effect to that type will not be triggered. Silverwolf can only implant one total weakness. When she implants a weakness on the target, only the most recent implanted one will be retained. In addition, there is a 100% base chance to further reduce the target's all-type res by 13% for 2 turns, and deals quantum damage based off her attack to that target. Her ultimate has a 120% base chance to reduce the defense of all enemies by 45%, and also deals quantum damage based off her attack to all enemies. Her talent lets Silverwolf have access to creating 3 different types of bugs. 1 reduces attack by 10%, 2 reduces defense by 12%, and 3 reduces speed by 6%. Every attack launched by Silverwolf has a 100% base chance to implant 1 random bug that will last for 3 turns. When the enemy target gets defeated, the weakness implanted by Silverwolf will transfer to the next surviving enemy on the field that hasn't been implanted with one yet, and also prioritizes elite level and above enemies. Her technique immediately attacks the enemy. Going into battle will deal quantum damage based off her attack to all enemies, and will reduce toughness of all enemies regardless of weakness type. If they are broken, the quantum weakness break effect will be triggered. Her A2 extends the duration of her bugs by 1 turn. Every time a enemy target's weakness gets broken, Silverwolf has a 100% base chance to implant a random bug on that target. Her A4 regenerates 20 energy when the battle starts for Silverwolf, and when Silverwolf's turn begins, she regenerates 5 energy. And her A6 will increase her attack by 10% for every 10% effect hit rate she does have, up to a maximum of 50%. Her E1 gives Silverwolf the ability to regenerate 7 energy for every debuff on the enemy target that is being attacked when she uses her ultimate, and the effect can be triggered up to 5 times in each use of ultimate. Her E2 will make enemies entering the battle take 20% more damage. When an enemy target gets attacked by anyone on your team, so allied targets, Silverwolf will have a 100% base chance to implant a random bug on the attacked enemy. Her E4 will give her quantum additional damage equal to 20% of her attack when using ultimate to attack an enemy for every debuff on the target, and can trigger up to 5 times per target during each use of ultimate. And her E6 will increase the damage that the Silverwolf does to that enemy for every debuff they have by 20% up to a maximum of 100%, meaning up to a maximum of 5 debuffs will be accounted. When taking a look at what Lightcone to use on Silverwolf, she has a lot of options, but one of the best ones by far is Cypher Signature Lightcone, which provides 18% increase to the wearer's speed, and after the wearer uses an attack, there's a 120% base chance to inflict the bamboozled state on every enemy target. Under that state, enemy targets will have their defense decreased by 16% for 2 turns, and if the wearer has 170 or higher speed, there's a 120 base chance to also inflict the theft state on every enemy target, and under that state, they have their defense decreased by an extra 8% for 2 turns. And when bamboozled or theft is repeatedly inflicted, only the most recently inflicted instance takes effect. Silverwolf is usually built as fast as possible, so the 18% speed is extremely good for helping you build her, especially when it comes to looking at her speed and trying to get her above hyperspeed thresholds. So the extra speed is very handy. On top of that, it provides you 16% defense shred, and if you are able to hit 170 speed or higher, it goes up to a total of 24% defense shred, which is absolutely insane. Silverwolf's ultimate provides a 45% defense shred, plus the bug she can inflict is an additional 12%. So that means in her base kit, she could have an enemy having up to a 57% defense shred. When you introduce this Lightcone as well, it's an extra 24% you can get. So adding the 24% to that means you have 81% defense shred just from Silverwolf alone. That is absolutely broken because the 80% threshold for defense ignore plus shred is usually when you see the best returns. So the fact that a character is giving you that by herself is just absolutely insane. And if you have other sources such as support eidolons giving you more defense ignore, if you have a DPS that's also giving some shred such as a Noxa, whatever setup you are doing, anything above that all the way up to 100% is going to reap a lot of benefits. So her alone is going to provide an insane damage amp, as she does provide, again, 81% defense shred with this Lightcone. And if you're able to get more than that, getting close to 100%, it's going to be that much stronger. This Lightcone has so much value just because she's able to hit over 80% defense shred by just having this on Silverwolf. That's going to be insane for her damage, any sub DPS, the main DPS, whatever you're doing. Everyone is going to get a big damage increase from doing this, which is why Cypher Lightcone is one of her best options. Tutorial Mission is also still a fantastic option. 20% effect hit rate and 4 energy when attacking a defense reduced enemy, and at S5 it's 40% effect hit rate with 8 energy. Effect hit rate is still important on Silverwolf, she just doesn't need nearly as much as she used to. And this Lightcone practically provides you all the amount you do need. 50% is where she does max out her trace, and that's practically the most you want to go. But this Lightcone giving you 40%, 40% is already good on its own, so you really don't need much else for effect hit rate. And also this giving you extra energy is extremely good. Silverwolf does have a defense shred in her kit, so she is able to utilize this herself. When you pair this with an ER rope and also a energy regen planner, especially considering the fact that her actual bonus trace provides even more energy, you are straight up able to get 1 turn ultimates, which is really strong, because now you can have constant shred on boss switching phases, switching waves. 1 turn ultimate with this Lightcone is possible, and it is very strong. Unfortunately, for the actual 1 turn setup, you do need either shared feeling Lightcone on someone else on the team, or you would need E1. If you don't have either of those, you'll be a little off, but you can compensate that with more speed. You won't be able to get a 1 turn ultimate, but you'll be able to get really close, and that can be succumb with RNG when you are actually getting hit, or if an enemy is also giving some refund on that as well. There's a lot of ways you can get 1 turn ult without them, but with E1 or shared feeling, that's how you get it most consistently, as you don't have to rely on RNG from getting hit or anything. But it is possible to almost get a full 1 turn ult when you are using this, especially with the ER rope and also the energy regen planner, which is why even without having those and not getting the full 1 turn ultimate, it's still such a powerful Lightcone. And if you do have E1 or a shared feeling setup, it becomes that much stronger. Another good option for a debuffer Silverwolf is going to be the Pearls Lightcone, having a 60% base chance to ensnare an enemy that isn't already ensnared. Ensnare will provide a 12% defense shred, and at S5 it's a 100% base chance with a 16% defense shred. As I already mentioned, she gets up to 57% defense shred in her base kit. Now with this Lightcone, that can go up to a whopping 73%, which is still very strong. It really just provides you some more defense shred. So if you're also trying to get to higher 80% to 100% defense shred levels, and you don't have any other option available, Pearl's Lightcone is still a very strong option. If you want to focus a bit more on her own damage, Silverwolf's personal Lightcone is still a fine option. 24% effect hit rate when the wearer deals damage to an enemy that currently has 3 or more debuffs, increases the wearer's crit rate by 12%. After the wearer uses their basic attack, skill, or ultimate, there's a 100% base chance to implant Aether Code on a random hit enemy that does not yet have it, and Aether Code will make those enemies take 12% increased damage for 1 turn. So some effect hit rate is going to be nice. As I mentioned, you don't need too much, but still getting some is going to be recommended. Now with 3 or more debuffs is really not a problem with Silverwolf. It never was. She has a bunch of debuffs in her kit. You'll have a free 12% increase to crit rate, so that'll let you crit more consistently, so it's going to be good for her sub DPS potential. And there still is going to be a vulnerability as you are making enemies take 12% increased damage, which will still be good for your team and also Silverwolf herself. So she still is able to utilize her own Lightcone pretty well. Unfortunately, it's just not as strong as other options. Another Lightcone is the new Battle Pass Lightcone. 16% increase to the wearer's damage dealt, and after the wearer attacks, there's a 100% base chance to inflict the attacked enemy target with vulnerability, increasing the damage they receive by 10% for 2 turns, and at S5, it's a 32% increase to wearer's damage, and a 16% vulnerability. Not really much to say, 32% increase to damage dealt is just going to increase the amount of damage that Silverwolf does overall, while also making enemies take 16% more damage, which is going to benefit her and also anyone else on the team doing damage. If you really want to focus on Silverwolf's damage, so you're mainly running her as a sub DPS first, debuffer second, then a Lightcone that provides nothing but more damage for Silverwolf is Acheron's signature Lightcone. 36% increase to crit damage when the wearer attacks, inflicts Mirage Fizzle on an enemy for 1 turn. Each time the wearer attacks, this effect can only trigger 1 time on each target. The enemies with Mirage Fizzle will take 24% increased damage, and the damage dealt by ultimate additionally increases by 24%. More crit damage, anytime you crit is just going to do more damage. Now anytime you do hit an enemy, they will be taking more damage from Silverwolf. So her basic attack skill, her ultimate will be doing more damage, and the ultimate is going to be the biggest damaging move you do have. So that getting an extra 24% increase to damage dealt is also going to be very strong, which overall makes this Lightcone provide a bunch of damage dealt and also more crit damage to amplify her damage better than any other Lightcone, which is why overall for her own damage, this is her best option. Another option purely for her own damage is Good Night and Sleep Well, increasing damage dealt the wearer deals by 12%, stacking up to 3 times, and also applies the dot for every debuff the enemy has. And at S5, it's a 24% increase to damage dealt. 3 debuffs, again, Silverwolf can do it on her own, and it gives you up to a 72% increase to damage dealt. So it's just going to increase the living hell out of her basic attack, skill, and ultimate damage. So if you purely want to focus on that, Good Night and Sleep Well is another option you can use. For relic sets, overall her best in slot, even honestly for if you are trying to get the most damage out of her, is going to be the Eagle set. 2-piece is useless, she doesn't do wind damage. 4-piece, after the wearer uses their ultimate, their action is advanced forward by 25%. 25% advance forward means you can get more turns. If you're looking at it as a debuffer perspective, more turns means you can refresh the debuffs more, provide yourself more energy to get your ultimate quicker for a different wave of enemies, the second phase of a boss, and so on. And in a DPS perspective, more turns means you can implant the weakness and have that up even more. You can implant bugs faster to try to roll the defense shred more, and same thing, you can attack more for more energy to keep defense shred up. And more turns mean more damage output as you're getting a whole other turn quicker, or maybe even a whole other turn within a cycle. So overall, even in the DPS side of things and also the debuffer side of things especially, Eagle set is overall the best in slot. Now if you're looking for a debuffer specifically, past that, you would want to mainly just do 2-piece speed and 2-piece speed, so 2-piece Hackerspace and 2-piece Relieved Ordeal, or one of those with Warrior Goddess. That is just to ensure you get as much speed as possible to act as much as possible and as quick as possible. So again, you can refresh your debuffs, provide more bugs onto the enemies, get more energy back to ult more for different waves and different phases. So for debuffer specifically, 2-piece speed and 2-piece speed would be the next thing you want to do after the 4-piece Eagle if you don't have that. For the DPS side of things though, if you do want to look at more relic sets that provide a bigger damage increase, one of the best ones is going to be the Genius set. 2-piece increases quantum damage by 10%, which she is quantum, so that's good. 4-piece, when the wearer deals damage to an enemy target, ignores 10% defense, and if they have quantum weakness, additionally ignores an additional 10% defense. Again, she does deal quantum damage, so 2-piece is going to increase her overall damage. 4-piece provides 10% defense ignore for free, and Silverwolf can practically guarantee quantum weakness on an enemy if you do position her first. So you can guarantee have quantum weakness on the enemy to get the full 20% defense ignore. As I mentioned, Silverwolf in her base kit gets up to a 57% defense shred. Combine that with a 20% defense ignore, the overall value becomes 77%. Which is insanely strong. You can get other sources again from Lightcones and such, or other DPSs or other support eidolons. This relic set just makes it a lot easier to get even more value. Just be sure you don't end up over capping, because any defense shred plus defense ignore values past 100% is completely useless. So if you are looking to amplify her damage the most as possible and you don't go over 100% defense shred slash ignore, Genie set is the best. Another really good one is the Pioneer set. 2-piece increases damage dealt to enemies with debuffs by 12%. 4-piece increases crit rate by 4%, where it deals 8% slash 12% increased crit damage to enemies with at least 2 slash 3 debuffs. After the wearer inflicts a debuff on enemy targets, aforementioned effects increase by 100% for 1 turn. She inflicts debuffs, so they always will be debuffed to get the free 12% damage. She is able to inflict 3 or more debuffs, so you are able to get the full effect. And she does apply the debuff, so you are able to get the aforementioned effects increased by 100%. And the extra 4% crit rate you are getting is going to be a bit better to balance your crit ratio, because obviously as a DPS you're going to be building some crit. So the extra crit rate is going to be nice and is going to amplify her damage by a lot, as you're getting 12% increased crit damage that also gets increased by 100%. For planner ornaments, starting it off for the purely debuffer focus role. In this role, you can really run any of the supportive sets that do provide 5% energy regen rate. One of the best ones is Lushaka, providing 5% energy regen rate and also 12% attack for the character positioned first in the team lineup. So not only are you getting that extra energy regen rate, which can help you hit further breakpoints to get more energy for quicker ults, or even the one-turn ult setup that I was talking about. At the same time, you're going to be amplifying the damage for the character positioned first in the team lineup as long as they scale off attack, as it provides 12% extra attack, so that could be good. If you are pairing her with a quantum DPS such as Zele or Archer, you can use the Penacony set. Also 5% energy regen rate and increases damage by 10% for all their allies that are the same type as the wearer, so you just need to make sure they are the same type, so in this case quantum. Another really powerful set is actually Von Walk. 5% energy regen rate, and instead of providing a buff or anything for your allies, you can guarantee that Silverwolf will be the first one to act in battle, allowing you to apply bugs and also getting your ultimate to immediately use it. Since Silverwolf will usually be naturally built pretty fast, this usually will be the 120 speed requirement, which you won't have a problem with, will usually guarantee the fact that she is the first one acting in battle. So you can immediately apply your debuffs and have your DPS do a lot more damage from the get-go. Now, if you want to focus on her damage mainly, so for the more DPS side of things, Glamoth is one of the best ones you can use. 12% attack, and when the wearer's speed is equal to or higher than 135/160, wearer deals 12%/18% more damage. 12% attack is going to increase your damage overall, and you usually always will have more than 135 speed, so it's going to be a free 12% damage source from everything. So any attack she does deal is going to be a free 12% damage increase. If you are able to reach 160 in battle, so if you are foregoing a little less speed rolls and you're focusing more on damage stats, but you have something like Runmei speed buff, or you have a Lightcone providing speed, and you are able to reach 160 in battle, or you just happen to have really good speed rolls, if you have 18% more damage, then the set becomes that much better. Another one just as good as Glamoth pretty much is going to be Inertial Soto, which provides 8% crit rate, and reaching 50% or higher crit rate will increase the damage dealt by the wearer's ultimate and follow-up attack by 15%. 50% crit rate should not be a problem if you are focusing on more damage, so you should have a healthier crit ratio. It also provides 8% to make building her a little easier. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a follow-up attack, so you ignore that. Her biggest source of damage, as I mentioned, is her ultimate, so that getting a 15% damage increase is going to be good. So with Glamoth, you get an increase to overall all the sources of damage she has, so basic attack, skill, and ultimate, while Sasato gives you a better increase to her main source, which is the ultimate. The main sets you want to look out for also do quite depend. For the body, there are a few options. If you are not running an effect hit rate body, for the most part you do want to use effect hit rate, as you do want to aim to as close as a 50% as possible to max out the bonus rate she does have, and also practically guarantee every important debuff she does have. She only needs about 40% effect hit rate to guarantee the more important debuffs, but 50% will max out her trace. You can still get a bit above that to further guarantee everything, but 50% is generally the most comfortable amount, and for that you would need an effect hit rate body. But if you are using a Lightcone that provides effect hit rates such as Tutorial or her signature, then you really would not need it. If you want to focus on her damage, you can use either crit rate or crit damage. You will probably always use crit rate in this case, but if you just happen to have really good crit rate rolls and you're using something that provides crit rate such as Salsado, then in that case you could use crit damage. But for the most part, if you want to focus on her damage, then you would use crit rate. Or if you really want to build her as the sub DPS but mainly debuffer and you have enough effect hit rate without effect hit rate body, in that case you would still use crit rate. Now if you are kind of just running her as a complete debuffer in a sustainless setup and you don't care about her damage, in that case you could also run HP percent, just so in the sustainless run she isn't super squishy and doesn't end up dying. For the feat, you're always going to want to run speed. For the orb, if you're running a sub DPS / you are focusing mainly under damage, you want to run quantum damage. If not that, you can do attack percent, but quantum damage is noticeably better. Same thing as I mentioned with the body though, if you are doing a sustainless run with her and you don't care about her damage, you can instead run an HP percent planner sphere. And for the link group, primarily you want to run energy regen rate, even as a DPS, just so you can get more ultimates. But if you really want to focus on getting the biggest numbers as possible, then you can run attack percent, but even as a DPS in most cases you want to run energy regen rate. For the substats, first prioritize effect hit rate to 40% and then past that get it to 50% if you can. 50% ideally, but 40% minimum. And then you would want to focus on your speed. For pure debuffers, you just want to get as much as possible, 160 or higher. If you're running Cypher Lightcone, you want to get that to 170. If you're running a more DPS focusing where you focus less on the actual speed rolls, you can still ideally focus on getting it to 160, but you don't have to focus it as much. At that point, you would at least want to get it to 134 or 135 if you're running Glamoth. Past that does depend if you are doing the thing where you run her as a sub DPS slash debuffer or focusing purely on her damage, or if you're doing the thing where you don't really care about her damage and you're running her in a sustainless slot and you just want to make sure she survives. For the sub DPS slash purely focusing on her damage, you want to focus on more crit rate, crit damage, and attack percent. If you don't care about her damage, then obviously you're not going to need that, and you can focus more on HP percent, defense percent, and even effect res so she doesn't get CC'd. Now for some team building ideas, the beauty about debuffers is they are relatively flexible, and Silverwolf is no different. She works great with a lot of characters that previously would use someone like Pela, so an Akron team, she is usually going to be one of the best options to use now. So you'd go ahead and have Silverwolf, you'd put Akron on the team, and then it depends if you are doing a E0 Akron or an E2 Akron. If you're doing an E0 Akron, usually you'd have another Nihility in that form, would either be someone like Cypher, so you could put Cypher on, or if you have Shachu, you could use Shachu. In my case, I'll just put Cypher. And last thought usually would be an action forward DPS. If you're doing a -1 or hyperspeed, doesn't matter. You can use Sparkle, you can use Sunday. Usually those two are the most common. If you have Bronya instead and you don't have the other two, or they're occupied, you can use Bronya. Or if you have E2 Akron, then obviously you don't need two Nihility characters. Or if you're doing an E0 setup where you still don't care about the full effect and you're just running one Nihility character anyways, you can sub out the second Nihility character for another Harmony character. Ideally, something like E1 Tribi is the best, but you can also do something like base Akron with a 161 speed Sparkle and a 160.1 speed Sunday or Bronya, so you can do something like this. But ideally, this slot would usually go to someone like Tribi, especially with her E1, as she's one of the best amps for Akron. You don't have to just focus on Akron, she works great with someone like Anoxa as well, as Anoxa has a bunch of defense ignore sources as well. You pair Silverwolf's a bunch of defense shred she can get. Anoxa's form of defense shred plus ignore he also has. You can get a great setup that gets 100% with just these two alone, and so usually Silverwolf will be the sub DPS slash pure debuffer on this team. And for Anoxa, you'd usually have a -1 setup, so in my case I'll just put Sunday. You can still use Bronya if you're doing a setup with that. Last thought usually would go ahead and be your sustain. So you can use someone like Fofo, you could use Linkshot, Gallagher, whatever is your best available sustain. Or if you're doing sustainless, it would be another Harmony character, so you could put someone like Tribi. I also did forget to mention a sustain for Akron. When I was talking about Akron, two Nihilities, so Silverwolf plus Cypher or Shaochu or whatever, the last slot would be the sustain. So just want to add that note. And it doesn't have to be those two either. Again, you could use even someone like Yunli. Yunli can benefit from Silverwolf's shred and amp overall as well. Silverwolf ideally would be the slot. You can either put a Harmony character in her slot, or you put a Nihility debuffer. In this case, you'd put Silverwolf. Next slot would be another Harmony character, so ideally with Yunli, it would be someone like Sunday again, because you know Sunday is the most overworked character in the game. And last slot would it be your sustain, or if you're doing sustainless, another Harmony character. So with sustain, again, you can use someone like Wolfo, Gallagher, Linkshot, Aventurine even, whatever. And sustainless, you can throw on Tribi, Ronmei, Robin, and so on. Again, Silverwolf can really slot into practically any team you do want. The only real teams you don't want to use her on too much is something like Castris or Finon, really. Otherwise, every other team, she can function relatively well. Even if she may not be the best option, she isn't going to fall behind by a big amount. And that does wrap up the full Silverwolf guide. I do hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn the bell for future videos like this, along with all other types of Star content. And I'll see you later. Peace out.